Welcome to Lessons from the Woodlot. This question came to us from Tanner Seaball. You guys need to pick a random farm in any state, break it down from an aerial standpoint as to where and why you would focus and the areas that you would focus in on. We also had one from Brandon Clark asking if there's any way to include aerials in a whiteboard and explain Mark's expertise. I'm a dumb lineman over here. I absolutely love the podcast, by the way. Thanks for all the info. Without further ado, Mark, go ahead.
Okay. Well, now this is just something I just randomly picked. I just got on OnX, went over, I went through, I don't know if it matters what state, but it's in Illinois. Just stopped at some spot that looked interesting and I screenshot it, and then I was basically going to tell everybody my thoughts on it. That being said, I'm just going to kind of draw on here and talk my way through what I am seeing. And this is nothing of manipulation. This is just how thermals react, what I see on these aerial lines and so on and so forth. So hopefully in the cameras, the elevation lines will show up on the camera so you guys can see it as well. But so on this particular thing, there's one thing that jumps out at me right off the bat. If we look right here in this spot, that to me looks like a killer stand. Probably at face value, the best stand on the property. I'm going to show you why. So first off, if you see the elevation lines, as you can see right in this area here, those elevation lines are really close together. So I know that is a really steep hillside. So then, as I look at this, I believe traveling deer are going to be coming down along this and up around this part of the creek. So they wrap around that creek, shoot on through that direction, or continue this direction. Well, I see these steep elevation lines here, and this is a pond right here that I can tell. So I know they're going to travel below that. So if I go back to the color for their travel pattern, as you see this and this elevation line, I know that's a ditch too, so they're going to stay below that. And as, or at least in reasonable thought, you would think that they would continue to do their traveling, going from point A to point B, looking for does and so on and so forth. They're going to continue along this trajectory right here. Again, we get some pretty steep ones here, so I bet they stay along that and continue on. So in going through that, a couple of things show up. One of the takeaways is right here looks like a really good place for a stand to blow some kind of southwest type wind. And then you could access through here to the stand, and then with a southwest type wind, you could reasonably assume the deer traffic, or at least the one that you would want to shoot, is headed in this direction right here, coming right down this, coming through past you. Then the other spot is right here, my favorite one, with all of these elevation lines so close. I know this is super steep. They're probably going to be below or above that. And then you start connecting this trail with this trail, this path with this path, and this path. And all of a sudden, X marks the spot that is pinched by this creek right here and these elevation lines right here. And I know that's getting busy, but everything comes together in one spot right there. And you'd have a northwest wind as your wind to hunt that, again, accessing this way towards your stand. Second really good killer spot. Next one I see right here. Now, depending on access, whether it was from the north or from the south, ideally this north one would be your route. You could come in here pop right across that creek, climb up in your stand, blow your wind direction like this in any facet, and catch traveling deer. I'm getting really busy here, but having traveling deer coming through here in that facet, and it would give you a different wind to hunt this on. That would be, I would do that in the morning. I'd wait till gray daylight, let this field clear of deer, slide into your spot, and hunt that with a south wind. Another one that comes up to me is right here. So you get the inside corner of this field with the tightness of all this, and there's a bit of a hump in the creek right here. So it looks to me on an aerial like there's going to be a lot of traffic through this corridor right here. And that would give somebody, if you access from this direction, you could have a killer stand right here covering this distance, knowing that this ditch is shoving him up the hill and then this inside corner keeping them through this. So right here is X marks the spot with a really good east, coming at it from this direction with a wind blowing back in that direction. You could again duplicate this process over here in that spot, as well as if I look right here, there's a deep ditch here going up the hill. There's another one here, and then any deer traveling along here, odds are going to stick to the top side of those drainages in there, and you might be able to key in. Again, you'd have to walk it to know exactly how they're using and which trail or which side of the hillside that they're using right here, but there really could be a pretty good stand either above or below this somewhere. I would prefer above with a wind blowing like that if at all possible. And then let's talk about thermals real quick. I'm going to start removing a whole bunch of that I just put on there so I can clean this all up so we can talk about thermals. You might have to edit some of that there, Jake, because that's a lot of tapping.
Hit that done button at the top and it'll not save it.
Okay. So, a lot of times people will talk about, let's say they have them a food plot, say, in here. Now, the problem with having a food plot low like that is in evenings when the weather or when the wind is light, what you get is you get air cooling off, gets denser, starts falling. So in this particular scenario, in the evening, you get a rush of wind coming down these hillsides into this bottom. Then over here, they start falling down like this. And then over here, they're falling down like this, constantly coming down at this whole area from every direction. So no matter how you try to get yourself in there, if he is bedded on it, especially what happens is everything west, the way my arrow is right there, of here, all of that whole valley, everything's coming downhill like this, and then it gets shoved straight out like this too. So they tend to like to bed right here or right here where they're getting fed air from absolutely every direction. And then they can watch that. So if you try to slide in like this, he's laying right here on one of these ridges, catching all the thermal activity coming down at him, and then he's watching that food source, and you simply can't get to it. And if you are successful, it will be spotty at best. You're much better off to make something like that a food source up high, or something up here up high, and then bring them deer up to you where you can put your wind where it could fall back, to a safe space. I mean, this is just a rough drawing, but you get the gist of it. So I typically always try to keep my food high, and then put my, have my, if it's a gun blind or whatever, in a safe place where if thermals start taking effect, it starts pulling them out away from where you're at. So, and again, that's just a rough draft on the food plots. I don't want to get necessarily into that, but I wanted to show this how I would do this in I've never stepped foot on the property, and then I would pick all of these keyed in spots that I was talking about all through here, and all of these stand spots that I was saying, and then I would want to go to those first and look and check them out, see if they're using the area like I thought they were using, and if so, get my stands hung in every one of those positions. That way I am ready for the rut. Now, that thought process, doing that, those are all keyed in on funneling spots. So early season, that might not be great. It might be pretty dead if you set cameras on it. But once you get into the mid-late 20s of October, so on and so forth, next thing you know, and especially into November, every one of these spots gets super hot. Because just think about, if you have to go from point A to point B to point C to point D, and you're going to use any kind of cover to get yourself there, you need to think about, where does he get choked into a position at which I can reasonably shoot him within archery distance, and then key in on those locations, especially when you've got really good entrances and exit. If you see every one of those positions that I laid out, the entrance and exit was across the open, if you will, and you're popping in those spots. You're not walking in the timber very far, and you're keying in on locations that numerous different trails get converged into a shooting distance set of trails, and then your odds are much, much higher. Just from an aerial, that's how I would try to break this down, and I'd key in on those particular points. I would drop a pin on OnX in every one of those, and that's the first places I would go to whenever I looked at this. So I hope that helps. If you guys got any more questions, I'm here for anything and everything you guys got to ask. Thanks again.